Welcome to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast, bringing you the innovative new ways of the cattle industry. I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Hayes.
Together, we're going to be interviewing industry leaders of all ages.
Here on this podcast, our focus is honoring God and innovating the cattle industry.
So let's get innovating. Have you been looking for Brahman cattle with a good genetic background? Contact 79 Cattle Company, selling reliable Brahman replacement heifers, Brahman show prospects, and Brahman bulls. Contact Taylor Tate at 210-241-4511. Again, that's 210-241-4511. Or contact Mallory Tate at 210-861-0155. 210-861-0155. All right, it's time for another episode of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. In this episode, we interview Mr. Carl Ray Polk, where the first part of his interview was in the November episode, so make sure to go check that out if you haven't already to know exactly what we're talking about. Also, we're going to be interviewing Congressman Nathaniel Moran from the 1st Congressional District of Texas. So make sure to listen to the end because that promises to be a very informative interview. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas to everybody. Let's roll it. So that's the topic we really want to move into is ag advocacy, especially for the beef industry.
Yes, absolutely. Just to start us off on ag advocacy, I mean, we've talked about a ton of different topics that we need to advocate for, but just broad on ag advocacy, could you talk about how important it is for us to advocate for our industry?
Well, we're going to tie this all back to something I said early on, and it's an education process. Think about all the things that have come into this conversation and podcast, whether it's the percentages of land taken in by the bullet train, whether it's the amount of food and fiber, whether it is understanding traceability and being able to provide the consumer with a safe product. It's all education. And I think as young people like you, I think as young producers that are coming into the industry, it is critical that we advocate for the industry we love and we're a part of. But the biggest part of that is education, because there is so much out there. I mean, you guys have Googled or pulled up 3 or 4 questions just in this podcast. And some of the information is spot on, perfect, terribly accurate, and then a lot of it is not. And so, Paul, I think as you and Baxter continue in your growth in this industry, anytime that you can educate a consumer, you can educate a landowner, another cow-calf producer, a yearling, backgrounder. It is all about carrying a message about the space to advocate for the betterment of this industry.
Yes, sir. Something that I always remember as a kid that I think actually schools have done to kind of help this is that they would always take us to a stock show and tell us and take us through those little places that tell us about where our food comes from. And I think that really puts that into kids at a very young age. And then as they get older, they are able to take ag classes, and ag teachers do a great job at telling kids that sort of stuff. And both of those do a great job, but there's always room for more people. I mean, every person definitely has a spot to advocate for the beef industry.
Absolutely, Paul. And I just want to throw this out there. When you go and you look up, facts about beef and people that are advocating for beef, what comes up, the majority of it is a lot of videos from this guy named Earthling Ed. And I can let y'all guess what side of the meat and veganism debate he's on. But it just shows how we really need to be advocating for our industry.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I know you're on the front lines of this a lot, and you talk to people. Have you ever been in contact with someone who is against the beef industry? And if you have, how did you kind of deal with that situation?
Well, unfortunately, I have, and I'll have to admit, on more than one occasion, and in most cases, Paul, it worked out okay. I think the misguided and misunderstanding is whatever protein, whether you're in poultry, whether you're in pork, or you're like us, you're in beef cattle production. Those that raise the biggest attention is over the treatment, whether it's a humane treatment. And a couple of the scenarios that I found myself in was where there were a couple of folks advocated that we are not humane in the way that we raise and produce beef. And I can get pretty salty because I've used this and said this. I probably take care of my cattle and our background in calves as well or better than I did my kids. When you think about the two of you, I mean, what you do every day with your show animals, show heifers, steers, not to mention what your folks may do with their production. And so, again, we've talked about this with in another relation to the industry, but there is a misunderstanding of how humane this industry treats our livestock and primarily our cattle. And to combat that, I think you have to just tell them, look, I welcome you, gates wide open. You want to see, come on, I'll show you, and educate them. Because it is, there's always a bad actor out there. You're always going to find one or two bad actors. But overall, this industry, and specifically producers in Texas, heck, we take care of our cattle better than we do our pickups. So,
for sure.
You just have to try to pick your time, pick your position, and educate.
And you did jump in. You jumped into our next question. We were going to ask you about what's the strongest, or not the strongest, but what seems to be the biggest argument against, beef. And I definitely agree with you. I've told Paul this before. The argument where people come at us the most is the morality, but a lot of times you have to ask them, what do you base your morality off of? Because a lot of times those people aren't Christians, and that's sad. You would love to see them become Christians, but it's what do you base your morality off of? And
I'm never going to question, because I don't like being questioned about anyone's specific beliefs or their faith. It's up to you. But don't judge me, and don't judge this industry based on hearsay. And
right.
and if I'm not performing ethically, I want somebody to say something to me. But until you know that for fact, and it's not just hearsay, again, for the fifth time, you need to educate yourself.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
And you're talking about treating our cattle better than we treat other things. I can tell you for 100%, I treat my show cattle's hair 20,000 times better than I treat my own hair. They get so much treatment.
I know.
They get pinned up with a fan on them. They get all the special stuff.
Life is good.
We can tell, Paul. I'm just kidding.
No, you're good.
Anyways. you truly want your livestock to perform at their best, make sure to contact Vance Aaron, the owner and operator of AFL Livestock Solutions. Vance specializes in MagnaWave treatments that use pulsed electromagnetic fields, or PEMF, to relieve pain, swelling, and inflammation, caused to help your livestock feel their best. In addition to livestock, Vance can also help you feel better. His treatment works great on sore muscles and joints, along with other mobility issues. His treatments are FDA approved to treat migraines. Aaron Family Livestock Solutions has helped many exhibitors make it to the backdrop with their proven MagnaWave treatments. Don't miss your next backdrop picture. Give Vance a call at 903-720-3184. Again, that's 903-720-3184. Or find them on Facebook at AFL Livestock Solutions.
Paul, okay, so we can move on to our next topic. Advocacy was a great topic to talk about, but now we're going to talk about the TSCRA. So, just to give broad information about them, what all services does the TSCRA offer, and how does being a member benefit a rancher? And something I'd like to say just before you get into that, there's definitely a lot of benefits being a rancher and being a member of that, firsthand from me.
Well, good. And I will tell you, we need more young people like you. We have made I'll come back to your question, okay, but we have made a very, very strong effort. Jason Skaggs is the CEO of Cattle Raisers, and he's got a staff of incredible folks up in Fort Worth. But one of the number one priorities under our membership is creating value. We're going to ask you to pay $150 or $200 a year, and you're going to say, okay, great. What am I going to get besides that nice blue gate sign and a Cattleman's magazine? And I'm going to tell you, you're going to get as much as you want to put into it. Again, I go back and I sound like a broken record, but we have some of the best education series available on YouTube. We have this one called Ranching 101. We do it once a month. You can do it virtual. You can do it there at the office, but 1 month it may be on vaccination protocol. It may be the next month on feed efficiency. The next month it may be on safe ways in which to improve your cattle handling pens. So education is number one. Secondly, for the benefit of being a member is our special rangers. And they're probably number one if you really get down to it. But we have 32 commissioned rangers. Our term for them is special ranger, that are commissioned in Texas and Oklahoma. They are not paid by any government entity. They are paid 100% by your dues, your TSCRA dues. But you have, unfortunately, there's as many bad guys out there as there are good guys. And if you have damage on your ranch, if you happen to, have a theft issue, whether it's tack, whether it's a trailer, believe it or not, guys, there's still a lot of cattle theft out there. Every week there's cattle theft. But our special rangers, which is the foundation of the organization, they're there to support our members and non-members. But your dues provide us that opportunity to provide those special rangers all over Texas and Oklahoma. But to me personally, being a member has opened up so many opportunities for me to become better in this industry. Just in peer-to-peer, in different meetings, in different friendships that I've developed at the time that I've been active. I've got folks I know right now that I can pick up the phone and say, my ox is in the ditch and I need some help, and they're going to be there. So, the association will soon be, it was founded in Graham, Texas, back in 1877. So we're soon to celebrate 150 years of TSCRA. And there's a lot more to this association than those blue gate signs.
Paul, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit the mute button. So you already talked a ton about the Special Rangers, and you stole the next question right out from my mouth, and it was just to talk about the job of the Special Rangers. Is there anything else you want to add about their job? But you already basically covered a ton of that.
Well, the other things the Rangers do, I mean, we also have market inspectors. So whether you're in the Stephenville sale barn, whether you're in the Crockett sale barn, whether you're in the Livingston or Navasota, you name it, there's a TSCRA representative there. Those Special Rangers, market inspectors, work for the Special Rangers. We're identifying cattle as they come through. Hopefully there's not any cattle that shouldn't be there, but that's just one of many things that they do. And I'll tell you, just real quickly, Paul, the Special Rangers are incredibly active during unfortunate disasters, whether it's hurricanes down in the Gulf, whether it was the terrible Panhandle fires back in March of last year. Some of the very first guys that are there, from search and rescue to different medical and support, our Special Rangers are there. They spent countless hours in the Panhandle securing cattle up there due to loss of fences. And I mean, that was just a tragic deal. But outside of the safety of our members and their assets, whether it's your cattle, whether it's a side-by-side, a four-wheeler, your horses, they are out there protecting the assets that we have in this industry.
That's
an important job for sure.
Yes, and yes, sir. And you basically led us into our next topic that I think Baxter's going to start us out off. Or is there anything else we want to add to the?
No,
that?
we're good. So, I would like to know, how did you get involved with Texas and Southwest Cattle Raisers Association?
Did your uncle tell you to ask me that question?
No, sir, he didn't.
Really?
No,
so
sir.
I'm going to make this story very quick, okay? But it really is funny. Back in 2011, Baxter, your uncle, Trent Ashby, I think he was a freshman representative, and we were sitting in the Capitol Cafe, and Ashby said, "Hey, Polk, aren't you a member of TSCRA?" And I said, "Yeah, we have." And he said, "You got to meet this guy, Jason Skaggs. He's right across the room." It's a true story. And I said, I need to go. I've got to get going. And Trent, no, you need to meet him. We went to A&M together, and you'll like him. He's a good egg. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And so Trent introduced me to Jason Skaggs, who at that time was the executive director of government relations and worked in Austin. I sat down with Jason. We talked. One thing led to another. I got active in the couple of legislative issues that TSCRA had. Did a couple of ranch gatherings. Got very involved in policy committees. That was 14 years ago. And so, as hard as it is for me to admit, Baxter, your uncle probably had as much to do with my activity and role in TSCRA as anybody.
That's great. I actually didn't know that. I just wanted to. I was truly interested in that question. I didn't know.
No, well, don't tell him that, or his head's going to get bigger than it already is.
I hope he's listening. But
he probably is. He probably is. He's probably sitting at his desk with his feet propped up.
I don't know. Have you been looking for a place to buy top quality AI sire semen or collect a bull of your own? Well, look no further than Elgin Breeding Services. Located in Elgin, Texas, Elgin Breeding Service is not only one of the best breeding services in the business, but also has superior customer service. Contact them at ebsbull@elginbreedingservices.com or by phone at 512-285-2019. Again, that's 512-285-2019. And visit their website at elginbreedingservice.com. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. So, you you are the TSCRA president, and you also run your own ranch. So how do you balance those two things, just in general?
Well, it's a balancing act for sure. I got some really good help, Paul. My dad still goes to the ranch every day. He's not quite as able to get around as well as he used to, but he can drive through cattle and check cattle that quick. I've got a couple of really good guys that work with us, and so that's good. But it is a balancing act because it requires quite a bit of travel, quite a bit of time being away. But I do thoroughly enjoy it. It has allowed me to meet some really good folks that have become and will continue to be friends of a lifetime.
Well, thank you for that input. All right, we're about to start wrapping up, but we have just one more question for you, and it doesn't really go along with any of the questions any of the other questions we asked you today, but it is something I thought that you would have a good opinion on, and I was really interested in what you had to say about it. So, what are some new technologies or techniques in the beef industry that are helping the beef industry, but also, we have talked a lot about the seed stock and commercial industry on this podcast, but we want to venture into some other sectors. So what are some technologies that can help in all sectors, and maybe the feedlot or the background in industry too?
Well, and I'm not the IT guy, Baxter. I admit to that. I depend on both of my sons to help out in any way they can. But I'm an advocate of continuing to look at different technology specific to whether it's weight gains, whether it's feed efficiency. I am again not as savvy in working the programs, but I think if you come to our convention, for example, up in Fort Worth, and it'll be this year in April, and I want the two of you to come. Okay,
I came last year, and I loved going through the convention.
Did? Okay.
Yes, sir. So that's actually when I first signed up to be a member of the TSCRA. Me and my whole family signed up, and we went to that, and we had a ton of. It was super fun. I loved seeing all the new technologies. That's how we got involved with CattleMax, a new technology that we use to keep records for our herd, and it just helped us to learn a bunch of new technologies, and we now use those too. So that's it. I definitely recommend going to that for anyone who's able to go, because that was great.
And it is, it's for 2.5 days there in Fort Worth. But my point in that is, to me, Baxter, there's not one thing that just really sticks out to me as far as a technology burner, just something that's out there. I mean, you have so many of our partner members. Sure, you're going to see John Deere and New Holland. You're going to see all your equipment manufacturers. You're going to see the latest and greatest hydraulic squeeze chute or the WW manual chutes. But the opportunities to advance with the betterment of the assets we have, but the technology that comes with it. We're not a big operator, but I can today run, whether it's a cow calf, or whether it's whether it's calves, whether it's yearlings, whether it's freshly weaned. And once they're in our squeeze chute, I mean, not only are they getting all the vaccinations they need, but we're weighing, we're measuring, and they're off and out. But the technology is there. It's just a matter of how efficient you want in making and using that technology for the betterment of your operation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that input. And thank you for the input you've given us this whole episode. I mean, we've covered a lot on ag policy, those 3 policy points that we really wanted to cover. I'm glad that we were able to talk about those and, advocating for our industry, and also helping people learn about Texas and Southwest cattle raisers. So I hope this has helped a lot of people. And it's about time for us to start wrapping up. So, Paul, want to go ahead?
Let me add one thing, Baxter. I interrupted. The one thing I want to leave with the two of you and your podcast listeners is dovetailing on what you just said. This is a shrinking industry, and it's a graying industry. And there are not as many today in the FFA programs and the 4-H programs that we had 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I grew up in the 4-H program. I take some of my best life lessons away from it. All three of my kids, same thing. You and Paul Baxter are in a minority. And what I'm going to encourage you two to do is continue to spread the brand.
Right.
Spread the brand of this industry. Doesn't matter which breed you're representing. We just need more and more faces and voices in the ag industry. So I applaud your efforts and what you're doing with your podcast, but you need to get as many people in the herd as you can. Voices are heard when there's more voices. So that's my tip of the day. How about that? Is y'all continue to spread the brand.
Right, and I'm sorry if I made you think. We do still have a few questions to wrap up with, but
Okay.
thank you for that. I just didn't want you to think we're done, but thank you for that.
Just our closing questions that we like to ask everyone.
Good.
Yes, sir. So one question that we love to ask everyone, and what are some core values that you would like to share with us? Because I know that, yes, sir, just core values.
Well, today there's so many things that we all deal with, and I think to me, falling back on core values and taking away all of the things you see and hear on social media, but falling back on faith and family and friends, I think we can, unfortunately, find ourselves so overwhelmed with all that's out there in front of us today, which can be underwhelming. But, fall back on your family and fall back on your faith and fall back on the foundation that you were taught at an early age. And I am a very transparent person. I think that's very important. Use respect, but be candid and be transparent. And don't be afraid to make a decision, because you're going to make the wrong decision one day. Just don't make the wrong decision twice. But I think sometimes my kids get so tired of hearing this, but I think we overbake things. We think about it too long, and we need to make those decisions and move. But not sure if I answered your question there, Paul, but just some thoughts that came to mind.
Yeah, you definitely answered my question with respect. Two of the things that stuck out in your answer was respect and be transparent. Were the two things that I really took from your answer right there.
Well, and again, you have so many distractions in life today. We all know what they are, and my grandmother used to say, "Stick to your knitting." So when you know you're good at something, continue down that path. Share those successes, but always fall back on your family if needed.
Absolutely. And that's something I know you said at the beginning of the podcast, is your family has helped you a lot. So that's absolutely true.
EP Cattle Company. Owned by Eddie Wilson, EP Cattle Company is home of Sir Rouse Handshake. Rouse Handshake is a sound-structured, heavy-muscled bull that is really bold-ribbed. So it comes with no surprise that he is a Fort Worth and San Antonio Junior Show Division Champion and Rio Grande Valley Open Show Division Champion. He is a grandson of BRC Noble and JDH Shank Manso, and is also a great-grandson of Mr. H. Elijah Manso. You can contact Eddie Wilson or Nicole Wilson on Facebook at EP Cattle Company. So remember, if you're looking for some well-performing, registered Brahmin genetics, contact Eddie Wilson on Facebook.
So this is something else we like to ask every guest, and what's your favorite Bible verse?
So I'm a Proverbs guy, and I'm not here to I'm not to make you think that I am as up to Scripture as I should be, but I do have a couple of favorites, and one of them is 22:6, and that is, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, and he will not depart from it. Just again, I'm kind of a Proverbs. And another one that it was in Paul's letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, I believe, is follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So just a couple that I don't know, always loop back into the family and the importance of that and following in those footsteps.
Absolutely. You said you're a Proverbs guy, and that's neat because, our key verse for this podcast is Proverbs 16:3, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plan. So that's definitely neat.
Same page.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Well, are there anything else you'd like to share with us? Anything that you wish we would have asked you that you need to share with people that are going to listen to this?
No, but can I ask questions now? Can I be
Yes,
the
sir.
podcast host? So can
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You got to do the two icebreakers there, Paul. So now here are my icebreakers. Okay. First for you, Baxter.
Okay.
Ribeye or filet?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I might actually have to go with the filet because you don't have to spend as much time cutting off the extra fat, but they're both really good. I love steak, so I won't complain either way, obviously, but I do like a filet.
Okay. Cooked how? I mean, when I say cooked, to what temperature? Medium rare, well done. Don't say well done.
Oh, don't worry. Medium rare.
Okay.
That's where it's at.
All right, that's good. All right, so here's one for you, Paul. I know you guys are very much in the gray Brahma, but if you had to pick on your F1, okay, would it be a Hereford over a gray, or would it be an Angus over a gray for a black or a tiger stripe?
That's good.
I don't really know statistically which one's going to sell better.
I do.
Or which one's... Okay, you do. I have to go with what my grandpa has told me. And he said that when he crossbreeds, he turns out a Hereford bull on all his Brahmin cows. So, without me doing my own research on that yet, I'm going to have to follow with what my grandpa's done. And one thing that he's told me that I always find pretty funny is that he says, if you see a Hereford bull out there, that means Grandpa still owns the ranch. So every time I pass by a ranch with a Hereford bull, that's what I think of.
I want you to email me that. I'm going to send that to all my friends at Powell and Dudley and W4, all of my Hereford breeder friends, is that if you still see a Hereford bull out there, Grandpa's still in charge of the ranch, huh?
That's what my grandpa taught me.
That's pretty wise. Pretty wise.
Yes, sir.
I'm good. And I want to tell you both again, I appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun. But I want to see you and continue to hear about you advocating for this industry we love, because you're in the minority.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Well, I definitely want to thank you for joining us, because we covered how important it is for us to advocate for our industry, what we're losing with land and how we're becoming a minority, like you just said, but also private property rights, and we also covered a lot of things from what this election could entail for the beef industry. So thank you for that.
I'm glad that people are going to be able to hear this before the election as well.
Right, we have the schedule for November 1st. This will be the
Some
November
people-
episode.
Yes, sir.
Or, well, actually, this is probably the second episode of this part, but we purposefully scheduled or put ag policy questions first for that reason. But thank you for joining us today, and don't forget, guys, that you can go check us out on Facebook and YouTube now, so please do that. We also create clips of this podcast on those platforms and also some extra videos to go along with that too. So make
And
sure to go
also-
check that out and follow and subscribe.
Yes. And if you have any, if you need statistics or just any answers that you think the Texas Southwestern Calories Association, would you like to share y'all's website one more time just for them to go onto if they have anything?
Yep, you can go to TSCRA.org, find all the information we talked about, and most importantly, you can pull up a membership application and you can join, because we'd love to have you. We're 26,000 members strong in Texas and Oklahoma, but we can always afford to have a few more, and the more the better. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Y'all have a good week next week, and I appreciate your time today.
Yes,
you
sir.
too.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
I guess it's time to wrap up, Paul. Thank you all for listening. Again, make sure to go check those things out, the YouTube, the Facebook, and the TSCRA website. And don't forget, keep innovating the cattle industry. Until next time. And we're back. We hope you enjoyed the interview with Mr. Polk. I think it's time we go ahead and welcome our guest and introduce our topic for this next interview. Our guest for this next interview is Congressman Nathaniel Moran. He is a United States Representative for the 1st Congressional District of Texas. He previously served on the Tyler City Council as well as the County Judge of Smith County, Texas, from 2016 to 2022. Since taking office in 2023, Congressman Moran has been an active member of the House's Judiciary Committee, House Foreign Affairs Committee, and the House Committee of Education and Workforce. He has shown strong commitment to supporting the agriculture community, frequently meeting with farmers, ranchers, and agriculture leaders to discuss the challenges they face. Congressman Moran has been vocal about opposing policies that negatively impact the agriculture industry and has supported legislation that is aimed at strengthening the sector. Congressman Moran, we're really grateful for you joining us today. How are you?
Thanks, Baxter. I'm doing great. Thanks to you and Paul for having me on today. It's a real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to our discussion on the possibility of an upcoming farm bill and the importance of that farm bill to our farmers and ranchers and our agricultural community in East Texas.
Absolutely. We're excited to talk to you. Paul, do you want to go ahead and get us started getting to know our guest?
Yes. So it was nice to be able to get an interview with you, Congressman Moran. But as in every interview, we like to start off with some icebreakers for all of our people that we interview. And since you have recently been in Washington, D.C. for the past years, I'm pretty sure what Baxter just said, what's your favorite spot to visit in Washington, D.C.?
Well, my favorite spot, without question, is the Lincoln Memorial. My 4th child is named Lincoln, and I named him after Abraham Lincoln. My parents actually hail from the Midwest, from Illinois, where Lincoln was and where he grew up. My parents grew up in a farming community in the Midwest where they grew a lot of soybeans and a lot of corn. My dad's first job as a teenager was detasseling corn, and so he told me a lot about that as a child, and value that history and value that perspective.
That's great. And Paul, just so you know, he's in Washington, D.C. right now. He was actually, when we were setting up, he was voting on the House floor. Is that correct?
That's right. I just zipped right over from the House floor, voted on a few measures, and got another long night of work ahead. We're going to do a teletown hall later tonight. It's so important to engage with constituents. And I got to tell you, you guys may be the youngest folks ever to interview me. And this already is one of the most well-prepared interviews. So thank you so much for your preparation and hard work.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties we had. Before we start with the meat of the interview, can you just tell us a quick story of how you got to where you are today and what events have shaped you to who you are?
Well, so many events shaped my life, and I love to tell the stories along the way. The roadmap of our lives are hard to see until we've gone down that path quite a ways and we can look back. But I'll tell you, it really all started for me with my parents instilling the values of service to others and service to God, finding a way to give back to the community, and understanding that my purpose in life was a purpose that God created and God instilled in me, and that purpose really was to serve Him, love Him, and to serve others and to love others. And finding a way to do that throughout our lives, we all have the ability to affect other people in a positive way. That was something, even as a young boy, I understood that even though we didn't have much, learning how to give out of what you did have was really important, and learning how to give of your time and your talents and your money to other people for their benefit, not for yours, is critically important.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Top Notch Cattle Company, selling semen on high-quality registered red and gray Brahman cattle that are reproductively efficient, structurally sound, big-ribbed, heavy-muscled, and deep-bodied. Contact me at 903-649-9155. Again, that's 903-649-9155. Or email me at bbwtopnotchcattle@gmail.com. We're going to go ahead and dive into the interview questions, and the topic is the Farm Bill. So what better question to start off with than what is the Farm Bill and what kind of legislation does this bill include?
Well, the Farm Bill is a really big piece of legislation. It comes up about every 5 years. That's typically how it is. And it provides the programmatic support for our farmers, our ranchers, and our agriculture community, and the assurances that they need to be able to make the decisions that they need long term to grow the crops, that food, that fuel, that fiber, do the things that we need to do long term so that those farmers and ranchers are successful, and that we remain independent from the rest of the world when it comes to our critical food supply. I mean, we've often forget how important it is from a national security perspective to have food security in this country. Another portion of that Farm Bill that we will talk about in depth today probably is things like SNAP. So we're not just talking about what's going to affect farmers and ranchers, but really the food assistance portion of the Farm Bill, which is the larger monetary portion of the bill, but is certainly something that is always tied to passage of this bill.
Absolutely. And you talked about the Farm Bill being one of the largest pieces of legislation. Not only is it one of the largest in terms of policies, but it's also one of the largest in terms of budgets.
No, it's about $662 billion over 5 years. That's one of the estimates that I've seen, and over 10 years, maybe 1.3 trillion. So it certainly has a big impact on our budget long term.
You just talked about a little bit of this next thing, and I was going to ask you, but how does the Farm Bill affect the environment, economy, and our food system and our nation?
A lot to unpack there, and this Farm Bill, as I said, is really long in detail. But let me hit a few highlights in each one of those categories, because from an environmental standpoint, I'll just have to say, you guys know this. You're in the ag community, the best conservationists I've ever met. The people that love this world the most and understand how to be great stewards of what God has given to us. Our farmers, our ranchers, our agriculture folks. because they work the land. They understand how important that symbiotic relationship is between the land and what we need to do to continue that, to propagate it. So, some of the programs that are involved in this from an environmental standpoint include reauthorization of the Watershed Protection and Flood Protection Act. That's known as the WFPO. It's a Department of Agriculture program that provides technical and financial assistance to state and local governments to help them manage their ag water supply and develop rural water supply sources. And in East Texas, we've got some pretty good water out there. We typically get pretty good rain. We haven't this year at times. But there are so many folks in Texas and across this nation that don't have the adequate water supply that they need to do the agriculture that this country needs. West Texas may be one of those examples where lots of cotton is grown in West Texas, but that Ogallala aquifer is drying up underneath the ground, and they don't have lakes and they don't get a whole lot of rain. So that aquifer is really important. So water supply is critically important. That's one of the environmental programs that's there. The other one that I'll make mention to is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program and the Conservation Stewardship Program. They both provide technical and financial assistance to farmers and to improve their land management policies. We want to be sure that we are maximizing what the land can give to us and not running it to ground. That's how the Dust Bowl happened many decades ago, was we just overused the land and we took out all the nutrients. And so being able to rotate crops and being able to rest properties in an appropriate manner so that we can continue to get the most efficient product that we can and grow as much as we can over a long period of time, that's important. But when you ask farmers to take a year off so the land can rest, well, that's pretty difficult for them financially. So the government needs to be part of that long-term process, again, because there's a national security and food security component to it. Economically, this bill does a lot to provide loans and guarantees to farmers to operate their farms and to buy lands. I know that in particular it's going to lower in some instances the number of years you must be in farming from 3 to 2 to qualify for certain loan programs, and it's going to raise the amount of money that farmers can borrow because we know inflation's driven up the expenses for farming and the capital investment that's needed. There's a lot that goes into the environmental, the economic, and the other aspects of this farm bill that are critically important to our farmers.
I definitely agree. And you keep talking about national security, and I think, the new administration that'll be coming in to the presidency is all about peace through strength. And I think without a strong agriculture economy, we can't have strength. We can't have sustainable strength, at least, to help keep our country strong.
I agree with you, Baxter. And one other note on that, it gives us leverage with a number of countries around the world. Let's talk about China. China needs our agriculture. China needs our food supply. And we want to be in a position that creates an incentive for them to agree to the foreign diplomatic policies, the military policies, the positions that we want them to take. Because if they are consistently coming to us for food, that gives us leverage in negotiations.
Yes, sir.
Did you have something else to say about that, Baxter? You can go ahead.
I did not.
All right, well, I was going to go ahead and say those are all great reasons that this farm bill can be just a great thing, but what is stopping this farm bill from being passed? Why does it keep being delayed?
Yeah, first of all, let me say I'm displeased by the fact that it's being delayed. We already let it expire last year. We pushed it to a 1-year extension. It technically has expired as of September 30th. And some of the programs are able to keep going until December 31st. That really becomes a critical deadline. If we can't reauthorize something or by December 31st, then we're going to revert back in some instances to 1920s and 1930s permanent statutory provisions, which are not consistent with the way things work today and would be adversely effective to our farmers and ranchers and our ag community. And the other thing that we unfortunately are doing, or we're hurting our farmers and ranchers by these 1-year extensions. They really need a longer landing strip. They need to understand what the 5-year landscape looks like. Now, to your question, Paul, why aren't we able to pass it? Well, because frankly, the Republicans can't get ourselves together on our side of the aisle, because the bill that we've got proposed that came out of the Ag Committee really is going to have to get passed on partisan lines. It's going to have to be a Republican only bill because of some of the new policies that we're attaching to it that would go to like SNAP and other provisions. And because of that, we need every one of the Republicans to agree to pass it. And right now we can't get that done, mainly because of the SNAP provisions. And so now's a good time to talk a little bit about that.
Please
You've
do.
got these provisions in there that are not necessarily farm and ag related, but they are the extensions of it. So the people that are eating the food that we're growing, and the food security issues of some families. And so the two concepts have been tied together for a long time. I wish they would be decoupled. Honestly, I wish they would be decoupled. But here's the thing that a lot of folks don't understand that they need to understand is, even if we don't pass the farm bill, the SNAP programs and other mandatory food security programs continue mandatorily through the appropriations process. The people that are left in the dust are the farmers, the ranchers, and those involved in the ag community. It's those provisions that will get hurt most of all. It's not the SNAP provisions. The farm bill is actually the way that we can affect policy change to make sure that only certain people are on those benefits, that we tighten the restrictions, that we have better auditing, that we have better controls, that we incentivize people to get back to work and move up from stations of poverty up to where they can sustain themselves and they don't need to be on those programs. The Farm Bill allows us to change those policies. If we don't do it in the Farm Bill, then the appropriations process happens, and they're gonna mandatorily get funded. The farmers are gonna get excluded from what they need, and the programs that we don't want to continue the same way are going to continue in the same manner.
You talked about the SNAP and how it might not directly impact cattle ranchers, farmers and ranchers, but also it can still impact them by leaving a bad experience on people. So that's also something that's really important.
Hi guys, I'm your co-host Paul Hayes, and I'd like to tell you all about my family business that has been going on for over 50 years now, and that is raising quality registered Brahman cattle. Our ranch is called Flat Rock Brahmins, and we have locations in Glen Rose and LaGrange, Texas. And we are here for all of your cattle needs. Whether it's needing show cattle, replacement females, or even a new herd sire, we would be happy to earn your business and watch our genetics excel in your herd. You can contact me by email at paulhayesv@icloud.com, or my dad, who helps manage the ranch, at paulhayesiv@icloud.com, or over the phone at 817-964-2752.
Yes, and you also talked about passing it, and you needing to attach new policies to the Farm Bill. So what are the new policies that are being considered for the Farm Bill, and how are they going to be an impact to getting this passed? Or just an impact to it?
Yeah, let me give you some examples of this. So some of the new policies in the House version of the Farm Bill contain stuff like they promote national security with more than $1.5 billion for federal livestock biosecurity by broadening the scope of the Ag and Food Protection Grant Program to fund cybersecurity and bioterrorism research. That's really important. Currently, the grant program only provides funding for research into bioterrorism threats, so it expands that. The House Ag Committee estimates that the effects of this bill will protect more than about $24.9 billion in livestock and poultry products produced in Texas alone. This bill also, from a new policy standpoint, would double spending on common sense trade programs, including $2.5 billion invested in trade promotion to provide Texas producers new markets. What that means is basically us going out and telling other people how good our beef and our poultry and our cotton and everything else that we grow in Texas is, and why they need to buy it in particular. And that opens up those markets and gives us a better supply chain down the road. So those are just some examples of new policies in the bill that are really important.
Yes, sir. And with policies, I know you've touched on this a little bit, but what are some new grants that are being considered for the upcoming Farm Bill?
Yeah, one of the ones is a $1.1 billion grant program to support Texas specialty crop industry. And that means things like garlics and mushrooms and olives, that things that typically wouldn't be associated with Texas when you think about our ag programs. Elderberries is one of them, celery root, leeks, horseradishes, things that are real specialty crops where we need more research and development in those areas. These grant programs would provide that research and development. There's also a $2.5 billion investment in ag research facilities at public universities like Texas A&M. That's already a leader in this area, but we want to see us continue to be at the forefront of that. And then a $2.5 billion grant program invested for trade promotion, again, to provide Texas producers new markets out there. And that's critical. If we grow it, if we raise it, we need to sell it to somebody.
That's unquestionable. You have something?
Yes, I mean, normally I would try to say something with every question that we ask you, but you've answered every part of every question. That's just great. But another thing that I was going to ask you is, how do you think the change in administration will change the Farm Bill or help it move faster? And how do you think the Trump administration will help affect the agricultural industry coming up in the next year?
Well, I believe President Trump and his administrative team understand clearly that food security is national security. That's number one. We've talked about that. So I think they're going to be tougher. Certainly, they're going to be tougher on countries around the world who are trying to block our ag products from going overseas into other markets. There's going to be a tougher trade negotiations that are going to benefit us. I think that, for example, Trump negotiated, in his negotiation of the USMCA, he eliminated Canada's unfair Class 7 milk pricing scheme that was creatively developed to allow unfairly low-priced Canadian dairy products to undersell U.S. products in Canada and in third world markets. I think he's going to do something similar to that as well. Same kind of deal. He negotiated previously updated rules of origin for processed fruits to ensure that preferences benefit U.S. producers, and he knows how to work a great deal. President Trump, no question about that. And I wouldn't want to be on the other side of the table negotiating with him when it came down to it. And I think some of these other countries that have seen weakness in the White House and they know that they can push against our ag industry and keep us out of their markets, they're gonna find out that's not going to be the case going forward. You might even see maybe a growth in some of the more naturally grown products under RFK Jr.'s heading of HHS. I think he's probably going to be pretty interested in that.
So can we move into that real quick? With him being appointed the head of Department in Health and Human Services, do you think there'll be a rise in beef consumption or just meat in general? Because, what he's wanting to do is kind of expose some of the propaganda about different foods and stuff. So,
yeah, I absolutely think that you'll see a greater demand for beef products and for high quality products, which we are raising and producing in Texas as good or better than anybody. And so I think you're going to see, particularly from the protein market, more market opportunity for our farmers and ranchers.
I agree with you. That's something I've thought about, but go ahead, Paul.
I'm just excited to see that because there's been a lot of stuff said, and I think he's going to clear a lot of that up.
I think so. And fellas, I just got another minute before I got to zip off to my next meeting. But let me just tell you, this has been a very insightful interview. You guys did lots of great preparation. What do you want to know in conclusion? How do we want to wrap this up?
Well, I have one last question I'd like to wrap this up with. And I'm really excited because I feel like a news reporter because I have a quote from you. So in one of your newsletters, you have said, quote, regulations from the Environmental Protection Agency have covered our cattle and poultry farmers in red tape. even as they are working to recover from the pandemic. Rather than over-regulating the industries, we need to support our farmers and ranchers with policies that will encourage growth and, I like this word, innovation. So what are some policies that you think would do just that?
I'm going to give you two specific policy responses to that are in the House version of this Farm Bill. One is an incentive program for agricultural research in the U.S. to ensure that American farmers can purchase the very best and most cutting technology. That will help us with our efficiency to grow more, to raise more on less land. We have less ag land by the day, and we've got to be able to produce more on smaller land. And then there's a forestry program also that incentivizes forest owners to continue to develop common sense innovations to bolster strong markets for wood. Unexpected markets, and I've talked through those with some of them, some of these wood producers and the Texas Forestry Association. Some really interesting things they could do with wood just beyond cut it up and build stuff with it. So I'm excited to see what's to come.
Thank you. You mind if I just ask you a one-word answer question real quick?
You bet, Baxter. Hit me with it. Although politicians are not good with giving one-word answers, so I'm just going to tell you.
I wasn't going to ask you this, but what's your favorite Bible verse?
Well, my favorite Bible verse is, I think you could go to Ephesians 4:1, and in Ephesians 4:1, if you go to Ephesians, Paul is writing to the church at Ephesus, and he says, I, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to be worthy of the call that you have received. And I believe that each one of us has a call in this life, and that we must follow that call, fulfill that call, and be worthy of the talents that God has given to our life, to each one of us, and to do the thing that he wants us to do in this life. Both of you boys have been called to do something great in this life. Glad to see you already on that journey. Glad to see you making the most of it, even at a young age. Keep it up. You're going to do great.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us. I know Congressman Moran has to go, so thank you for joining us, and we're really glad that we were able to interview you and catch you, and I'm sorry again for the technical difficulties.
No problem at all. You boys have a great day. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you.
Bye. Congressman Moran might not have grown up in the agriculture industry, but he's certainly done his research and knew what he was talking about. That was a really good interview. Make sure to check us out on Facebook and YouTube at Cattle Innovation Station. Also, make sure to like and share this episode and respond to our polls on the streaming service of your choice, which is probably the one you're listening to us on right now. And you can also email us feedback at bbwtopnotchcattle@gmail.com. Make sure to fill out our survey in the description below or on either one of our social media accounts. The survey will get you on our email list so you never miss an episode of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth. I was joined today by my co-host, Paul Hayes, and our guests, Congressman Moran and Mr. Polk. Thank you for tuning in. Keep innovating the cattle industry. Signing off. Hello guys, thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. We want to make this podcast better, so if you would, please like this episode and leave us feedback in the comment section. Something else that helps make this podcast better is when you respond to the polls. So if you're able, please respond to our polls. Help us make this podcast as good as possible. Thank you, God bless, and have a good day. Thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth.
I'm your co-host, Paul Hayes. Remember our key verse, Proverbs 16:3.
Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans.
Thank you for listening.